Immunology Part 5. Cells of Immune System. Cells of Immune System. Basically, there are three types of cells in the immune system which are participating in the immune activities of the body, like lymphocytes, phagocytes, and auxillary cells. There are basically three types of cells: lymphocytes, phagocytes, and auxillary cells. And among them, first of all, let us see about the lymphocytes. Lymphocytes are of two types: B lymphocytes and T lymphocytes. We say B cells and T cells in general. And B cells can be differentiated in the form of two types of cells: plasma cells and memory cells. If you see the properties of the plasma cells, they are short-lived. Memory cells, they are long-lived cells for the future reference if the same microbe, if it enters into the body. And we say generally short-lived plasma cells as effector cells, which immediately they affect on that particular antigens who entered in the body and affect on the next infection. Memory cells are going to affect on next infection. B lymphocytes can be differentiated into two types of cells: plasma cells and memory cells. They participate in the humoral immunity. Plasma cells are short-lived and they are called effector cells. Memory cells are long-lived cells and their effect is on next infection. Then let us see about the T cells or T lymphocyte. Basically, there are two types of T cells: T helper cells and T cytotoxic cells. Based on the cluster differentiating molecules on the cell membrane, we say that two types of cells they are: CD4 cells and CD8 cells. T cytotoxic cells generally considered as CD8 cells. T helper cells are considered as CD4 cells. In general terms, we use that word T4, nothing but T helper cells. T8, nothing but T cytotoxic cells. Role of T helper cells we have seen earlier. T helper cell may present the antigen to the B lymphocytes for either humoral immunity or may present it to the T cytotoxic cells and responsible for the cell mediated immunity. Whereas T cytotoxic cells are directly responsible and powerful against endogenous pathogens that we have seen in the earlier part. Simply we say T cytotoxic cells are responsible for cell mediated immunity. So, in the lymphocytes, there are basically two types of lymphocytes: B cells and T cells. And about the T cells, the T lymphocytes are of two types: T4 or T8, or we say CD4 or CD8, or we call T helper or T cytotoxic cell. T helper cell or CD4 cell or T4 cell. T cytotoxic cell or CD8 cell or T8 cells, we say based on the cluster differentiating molecule CD4 or CD8. The second type of cells of immune system are phagocytes. Generally, there are two types of phagocytes, we can say: mononuclear phagocytes and polymorphonuclear phagocyte. Mononuclear phagocyte, mono, single, nuclear, single nucleus, phagocyte, which they are going to phagocytize the microbial organisms or foreign bodies of our body. Then mononuclear phagocytes are of various types and in the different places of our body, like histiocytes are present in the areolar connective tissue, Kupffer cells, liver, microglia, brain, osteoclast cells which are present in the bone, synovial cells in synovial fluid. We say all these are the cells which are said to be the descendants of the monocytes of the blood. The monocytes, when they get activated, we call them as macrophages. These macrophages are going to settle down in the different places of the body. Like if they are settled in the areolar connective tissue, we call the macrophages as histiocytes. If they are seen in the liver, we can say Kupffer cells. In the brain, microglial cells. In the bone, osteoclast cells. In the synovial fluid, synovial cells. wherever they are present, their function is same, that is phagocytosis. So that's all about the mononuclear phagocytes. Now let us see the polymorphonuclear phagocyte. Polymorphonuclear phagocytes. Generally, granulocytes are considered as polymorphonuclear phagocytes because of their lobed nature of the nucleus. Neutrophil, basophil, eosinophils are multilobed nucleus or bilobed nucleus or irregularly lobed nucleus, different types of nucleus which they show. In that, neutrophils are about 62% in the granulocyte. And the way we use this word polymorphonuclear phagocyte is most commonly used for neutrophils itself, because basophils occupy only 0.4% and eosinophils are about 2.3%. Nearly 62% of the cells of phagocytes, polymorphonuclear phagocytes are all about neutrophils. That's why most commonly this word is used for neutrophils only. That polymorphonuclear phagocyte directly represent neutrophils because of their more percentage in compare with the remaining type of cells like basophils and eosinophils. The third type of cells of immune system are auxillary cells. The cells that help lymphocytes in immune responses like basophils, mast cells, platelets. They are going to secrete the inflammatory mediators which cause inflammatory response. Basophil, mast cells, platelets, these are all considered as auxiliary cells which secrete the inflammatory mediators like histamine, heparin, bradykinin, serotonin. Various kinds of inflammatory mediators are released for the inflammatory response. Inflammatory response, which is very important for our immune system, is done by these three types of cells. We call them as auxiliary cells. And the story of antigen presenting cells we are seen in the earlier parts. Antigen presenting cells are also auxiliary cells like macrophages, B cells, dendritic cells, which we are seen in the earlier parts. They are going to present the antigens to the T helper cells. That means either they are responsible for the humoral immunity or cell mediated immunity. So auxiliary cells like basophil, mast cells and platelets are responsible for the inflammatory responses. Antigen presenting cells are responsible to present the antigen to the T helper cells, which indirectly responsible for either humoral immunity or cell mediated immunity. Let's take a glance look on the cells of immune system. Once again, there are three types of cells. We said lymphocytes, phagocytes and auxiliary cells. There are three types of cells. Lymphocytes are of two types. B cells, which are responsible for humoral immunity, and T cells, which are responsible for the cell mediated immunity. Whereas B cells can be differentiated into two types of cells like plasma cells and memory cells. Plasma cells are short-lived and effector cells. Memory cells are long-lived and which their effect is on next infection. T cells are of two types based on the cluster differentiating molecules, which we divided them as T4 and T8. In general terms, we say them as T helper and T cytotoxic cells. T helper cells are responsible for either humoral or cell mediated immunity. T cytotoxic cells are responsible for cell mediated immunity. When it comes to the second type of cells, phagocytes, there are two types of phagocytes, mononuclear phagocyte, polymorphonuclear phagocyte. The descendants of monocytes are considered as mononuclear phagocyte. When the monocytes are activated, we call them as macrophages. These macrophages in the different places of the body are termed and given like this. Connective tissue, if they are settled, macrophages, histiocytes we say. And in the liver, the macrophages are called Kupffer cells. In the brain, the macrophages are called microglia. In the bone, they are called osteoclast cells. In the joints, in the synovial fluid, we say synovial cells. Wherever they go, their function is phagocytosis, engulfing the microbial organisms. Polymorphonuclear phagocyte. The term is most commonly used for neutrophils because of their more percentage than the basophil and eosinophil. Neutrophils, basophils, eosinophils. In general terms, we consider as polymorphonuclear phagocytes. Then let's come to the auxillary cells. They are supporting cells which they help in the immune responses. Like inflammatory immune response is done by basophil, mast cells and platelets by releasing the inflammatory mediators. And the story of antigen presenting cells which are having MHC class 2 molecules. Having MHC class 2, they may present this particular antigen to the T helper cells. Macrophages, B cells and dendritic cells can be considered as antigen presenting cells. So this is all about cells of immune system. And for more videos and the practice question papers of each and every chapter of the biology, 38 chapters of the biology and consolidated tests, grand tests are available in Neet SRIKANTH.blogspot.com. Please visit and download. Thank you.